to Season 1, Episode 22, PuckHeads Insider Report. My name is Ed Combs. I'm here in South Florida. My co-host, Peter South, up in Windsor, Ontario. We got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to get into all of it shortly. Today's show is brought to you by the Florida Grow House. You ever thought about your own greenhouse? Your own fresh fruits and vegetables? Well, here's your chance to get one. Have your own healthy, organic, fresh, and delicious fruits and vegetables. It's fun, it's relaxing, and it's money-saving food in your own backyard. Just go to floridagrowhouse.com or call 772-249-2095. Mention you heard this ad on PuckHeads Insider Report. Get yourself a $750 discount. This week's show is monstrous. We're going over everything. We have got so many things to touch on. We've got the NHL, all the updates on the divisions, who's doing what, who's where, who's the disappointment, who's the surprise, who's where they're supposed to be heading into the second half of the season. We're also going to go over NCAA, the Frozen Four, who's doing what. I bet you didn't know, and our mailbag. Peter, you ready to get started, my friend?
Sounds good, Ed. We're all hyped up and ready to go.
How are things in the Great White North, my friend?
It's getting not bad, the weather, and that's what happens when you haven't finished a regular season and you're in April and the weather starts getting nice. So right. It's getting better and better every day up here.
Well, COVID has not decided to leave these NHL teams alone. It seems that the Canadian Division of the NHL, also officially known as the Scotia North Division, they're not exempt from COVID at all. Montreal Canadiens were shut down during the end of March and had 4 games postponed because of COVID protocols. But what seems to be the biggest outbreak of COVID? Yep, it has struck the Vancouver Canucks. As of this broadcast, at least 21 players from the taxi squad and coaching staff have been tested positive, and that doesn't even include the family members of those infected as well. Reports say the P1 variant from Brazil is prevalent in the testing, as it has been going around British Columbia and now Alberta for a while. I was reading on this today, Peter, and I was stunned about how bad this is hitting Vancouver. I mean, they're in serious trouble of their season falling by the wayside. Seriously.
Yeah, They definitely are. It's bad out there. You know, we've heard of obviously a lot of teams, a lot of players who've been tested positive, but generally they're not getting sick, or if they're getting sick, it's very, very mild. But some of these players have been getting violently sick, diarrhea and throwing up and all sorts of stuff like that, fever, and it's pretty bad for them. And they're talking it could be up to 2 weeks before they're fully recovered. And in this short season, that could be disaster. And, you know, again, Ed, we touched on it many times through the season so far. Don't be surprised if the NHL ends up having to go with winning percentage as the deciding factor on who's going to make the playoffs in the NHL this year.
Yeah, that's been discussed. And if I'm a team that's got infected and I'm losing games or opportunity to make up games, I want to be Dallas. I want to be Carolina. I want to be a team that had hit them in the very beginning of the season. They can do a catch up. Yeah, they got to play a lot of games in a short amount of time, but they're getting them in. No one in the NHL or any other league that I know of in the world of hockey has been affected and infected the way Vancouver is right now. I mean, you had the Dallas Stars head coach Rick Bowness pulled from behind the bench during their game in Carolina. Jim Nill, 66-year-old. Bowness is fully vaccinated and has no symptoms, and the team believes it was a false positive test result from the virus. Now, Nill said the team got PCR COVID-19 tests back earlier than expected, leading to this move. No other Stars members tested positive. Now, interestingly, Dallas Mavericks head coach missed a game just days before because of a false positive test. Now, we discussed false positives and stuff like this going on in the NCAA and Notre Dame pulling, Michigan pulling. Could that have happened there? They're finding out it's going on here. Obviously, Vancouver, it's not, because these guys are violently ill.
No, it's definitely not going on in Vancouver, but I mean, I think it has happened with Jim Nill. I think it's happened quite a bit throughout the season. There have been players who've been put on the COVID list, and then the next day they're good to play. And so that's telling you, the test is coming back positive. They're doing a retest, and it's coming back negative again. And, false positives have been going on since the start of the football season. I mean, they had numerous false positives in the NFL before they got started. So the testing process is not foolproof. That's a fact. Many of our listeners know that for sure. What they're doing is they wanted to be sure. That's why they pulled Rick Bowness off the bench after the second period. I was actually watching that game on Sunday, and they put John Stevens back behind the bench. He's fully qualified, coached both the Flyers and the Kings, so he's fully qualified. To have to make that move is kind of disrupting to the players, because they do get it in the back of their mind, and especially Dallas, who's actually missed games because of COVID protocols this year. It's they're probably sitting there going, geez, I hope we're not having this again. So
exactly. Well, kudos to the NHL for what they've stated they're doing when it comes to testing. They have said it since the very beginning. They will not cut in line. They will not take away from other folks who are in dire need so that their players can get vaccinated. I'm not sure who has or how many have. A lot of teams have been affected by this, and it has not slowed their season. It has slowed their team. I mean, we have really no idea how to say, for example, with the Detroit Red Wings, lost 5-6 players to COVID. They kept playing, lost their entire second line to COVID, and players periodically have dropped out. We still don't know what is going on with Tyler Bertuzzi. Not played but the first handful of games this season. So there are teams that have held on to try to keep their season going, but the way it's hitting Vancouver, their season could be definitely in jeopardy.
Yeah, it's a bad situation out there, and definitely one worth keeping an eye on, especially with that. It's supposed to be the Brazilian variant going through that area. If there's cases of it already in the Alberta, and with Calgary and Edmonton both playing there, you hope none of those guys become exposed or infected with it.
All right, Peter, what do you say we take a look around the NHL's 4 divisions and talk about some of the surprises and disappointments that have gone on so far this season? And we'll stay up north, starting in the Canadian Division, Scotia North. Before we move on, what do you think of the advertised names of these divisions? I mean, Scotia is obvious because it's Canada, but
well, it's a bank up there, and
right,
Mass Mutual is the insurance company out east, and Honda is, big league sponsor anyway. They do the West, and Discover Card, also another league sponsor. You know what? It's a way the league had to generate revenue because they didn't know if they were going to get after the seats. Yeah. And it's just like how they put the advertising on the players' helmets this year. It's not distracting. You can see it when the TV does a close up on a player or whatever, but I mean, it doesn't take away anything. And, like I said, they've got to be able to make money. It's a business, and they can't just be operating in the red all year. They have to have some type of revenues coming in. It's really good to see. And this is something, Ed, I was going to talk to you about off air, but I think this week would be a good time for us to do some research. I know none of the Canadian teams are allowing fans, but let's take a look at how many of the U.S. teams are allowing fans and what percentage of their capacity they're allowing them at. I think that'll be really interesting to see.
Well, here's what I can tell you on what I do know. 850 are allowed in Detroit. I believe there's the similar numbers in Nashville. Columbus, I don't know. Tampa is about 1,000, maybe 1,200. Same thing for the BB&T Center in Sunrise, Florida. The only city that is allowing fans 100% in all stadiums is Texas. So they're opening ball team for the Texas Rangers, who have opening day coming. They're going to be sold out. Dallas Stars, if they can do it, they will be selling out. They're wide open 100%. Houston Astros, they're going to be selling out.
Now, Houston's an indoor stadium. I wonder if they will be allowing full capacity.
Everything in Texas is 100% open, 100% capacity with no restrictions, other than if you are going to a sporting event, you have to wear a mask. That's their only stipulation.
Well, just to take a little a branch in the road here. Speaking of Texas, I'm not sure if you or our listeners are aware, but the World Under 18 Championships, which are big this year because of COVID and a lot of players, especially Ontario players, not playing, were supposed to take place in Plymouth in near the end of April, and that whole tournament has been moved down to the Dallas Star Center and their facilities. Well, not in the American Airlines, but the Stars, their practice facilities in Frisco and rinks there, just because of the much more relaxed regulations. And so, I mean, they'll still have, all sorts of protocols to follow, but they're moving it there. They didn't want to take a risk of dealing with Michigan's governor and health system there, so they moved it all down to Texas.
Yeah, everything going on in Michigan right now is a joke, and I feel sorry for all my families and friends who have to deal with her and the crap and her BS. And don't get me started, so let's stay with the game.
Well, hey, the only thing worse than that is Ontario, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right, let's go back to the North Division, Ed.
All right, as anticipated, the Toronto Maple Leafs look to be taking control of the division with Edmonton, Winnipeg, and Montreal, the teams who will more than likely wrap up the rest of the playoff spots. The Leafs kind of hit a midseason funk, if you will, or slump, and it looked like it could have been disastrous for them. They lost goaltender Frederik Andersen. Backup Jack Campbell has stepped in and not only played well, but he's making a serious bid to take over the starting job. So far this season, Campbell is 8-0 with a 1.35 goals against average and staggering .951 save percentage. The way the team is playing in front of the 29-year-old Campbell, they seem to believe he has finally hit that stage in his development when he can take the team to the promised land. Another pleasant surprise for the Leafs is Austin Matthews. Now, he leads the NHL so far with 25 goals in 35 games played. Just as important for Toronto, he seems to be maturing into a strong 200-foot player. There's been rumors that I think that what we're talking about right now, Peter, have been put to bed. The trade deadline is quickly approaching, and there's a lot of teams that are looking for that backup goaltender, and everybody is talking about Jonathan Bernier and how Toronto could use him. Now, he already played there, and if I remember right, did not do well in that city. I mean,
he was there as a starter, that's why, and maybe that's not his role. Yeah. All right.
Anderson will come back fine, so look for Toronto to really take control of that division. Yes?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think they're set in their goaltending. They got Michael Hutchison as their number 3. He played on Sunday night in Calgary, and I watched the game. He had to step up pretty good, especially in the second half of the first period, and kept Calgary, kept the game close. And Toronto, after trailing 2-1, came back at 1-4-2. So their goaltending seems to be much stronger than I think a lot of people think it was. So which is, I'm sure, a very pleasant surprise for them.
The biggest disappointment in the Canadian division has to be the Calgary Flames. Now, you and I don't agree on a lot, Peter, but on this, we are both 100% in agreement. Firing head coach Jeff Ward in early March and brought back Daryl Sutter.
Yeah, one thing about bringing Sutter back is that it told me that the room was a bit of a mess and they needed the hard-nosed, I'm the boss attitude that Sutter brings in, and to try to change the culture back to a way where the inmates aren't running the asylum. And one of the things that's been noticeable since his return is the decline in ice time with Matthew Tkachuk. Tkachuk has been a bit of a wild card the past couple of seasons, letting little temper tantrums take away from his game and being a distraction to the rest of the team. Earlier this year, Sam Bennett requested a trade. So far, production from players like Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, and newcomers Joss Levo and Joachim Nordstrom have been way below expectations.
Who do you see them selling off by the trade deadline? do they honor their request for the trade from Sam Bennett? Do you see Johnny Gaudreau drawing some big draft picks?
Yeah, I can actually see any of those names I just mentioned, except for the two newcomers, Levo and Nordstrom. I can see Bennett, Monahan, Gaudreau, or Tkachuk all going for a twofold reason. One is to reestablish that management and coaches are back in control of the room and the team, and also to do a reset for the organization. I mean, they got a great goaltender in Markstrom, who's unfortunately been out with an injury a couple times this year, which I think has hurt them. Their defense is pretty good, but I think they got to take care of some of these wild card guys they got up front.
Okay, not only does it send the message that management is in control of the team, how you put it so eloquently, the prisoners are not running the asylum, the management is. But what does that say to fans that we're unloading everybody and we are now going to a rebuild and starting over after what they've gone through the last few seasons and being so close?
Well, you know what? I don't really think they're going to do a rebuild. Like I said, I think it's going to be one, maybe two players that they're going to ship out. One big name for sure, I think. I mean, usually that's kind of the root of the problem is one guy, kind of leads a group one way and against the rest or something like that. And, if you can cut the cancer out, if that's indeed the case, and move them, but you got to have a willing trade partner, obviously, then it's just minor tweaking, well, major tweaking, but only, with one, maybe two players, as opposed to trying to gut a whole team like, Buffalo may be in for. But,
that's a whole nother conversation. Side. But I have one major question. Did you see Ottawa stepping up for Tkachuk's services to put the brothers together?
I can see that, although, Ottawa Pierre Dorian in Ottawa seems to have a plan, and he has got so many good young players. I just noticed today, might have happened a couple of days ago, they just signed Shane Pinto, who was at North Dakota University. That kid is a player, and I think could be every bit as good as Tkachuk, maybe better. So they might not need to move any assets to pick up any. And
draft picks. I mean, if you can get a couple of draft picks for him, a first, a second, or what have you, and get him, and don't tell me that won't bolster that team putting those two together. You got
for sure,
very talented Tkachuks. That name alone draws.
Yeah, maybe the one brother can start slapping the other one in the head to get him to focus on the game. And that's happened more than once. That's for sure.
It though? All right, Peter, let's jump into the East Division. The biggest surprise in the East Division so far this season has got to be the Washington Capitals. Not far behind them, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Both teams having aging superstars, but like fine wine, Ovechkin and Backstrom for Washington, Crosby, Letang for the Pens seem to be getting better with age. The biggest disappointment in that division has got to be the Philadelphia Flyers. After their great play in the bubble last summer, only to be knocked out in a close series with the Islanders, it looked like they had all the pieces in place. Reality seems to have come knocking on the door, and the Flyers have answered, and they have struggled a lot this season. Those struggles include being the victims of the Buffalo Sabres breaking 18 consecutive game losing streak with a convincing win over the Flyers, 6-1 last week. Sabres are also a big disappointment. No one would have picked them to win the Cup. But to have the bottom drop out and be in the pits of despair was not foreseen. No one could have seen that coming. No. At worst, they look like a team that could compete for a final playoff spot. But now they're 31st, worst team in the league. And fortunately for them, Seattle isn't playing yet. They would be the 32nd worst team. One thing that still bothers me about Pittsburgh, and I don't know if you saw it, it was yesterday or the day before, Sidney Crosby could have won an Academy Award for his freaking dive that was so pathetic. He deserved a 5-minute major for embellishment. It was a joke. And that's why I cannot stand that whiny little brat. He disgusts me the way he talks to officials. I'm better than you attitude is bull. I can't, and that just cemented it for me. Watching him do that, I was like, You got to be. You're a superstar in this league, and you're making an ass of yourself.
Well, you're right. I mean, he's had a reputation as a whiner since his first season in the league, and it's let up a little bit. But yeah, when you see things like you saw the other day, I didn't see it live, but I did see the clip. And you're right. There will be an Academy Award shipped to him by Amazon. I don't know if it's 2-day delivery or next day, but it will be shipped to him.
Does the league talk to him?
You know what? I can actually see the league sending him, giving him that customary $5,000 fine that they seem to be handing out to players this year. But I mean, again, we laugh at the $5,000 for what they're making, but that is what they negotiated with through the union, and that's what it is. But I can see him being slapped with that for the embellishment. I mean, it is kind of embarrassing to the game when you see a superstar act like that. I mean, yes, he did take it, a bit of a butt end to the face, but it wasn't enough to cause the looking like he got shot from a sniper in the 17th row.
I didn't even think it hit him. I thought it got close, but I don't know that it touched his face.
Yeah, but
let's digress before I go off on a rant.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, the bottom line, and the shame of it all is he doesn't need to play that way. He plays the game so well. He's so good that he doesn't need to resort to stuff like that to help the team win. Absolutely. And his talent alone is over and above so many others, and he's got 3 cups now. So I mean, you can't argue with what he can do.
All right, Peter, let's jump into the Central Division. And the biggest surprise of that division, probably the whole league. I don't think you and I are shocked, as we saw the Panthers play a game in Florida a couple seasons back. And with Joel Quenneville behind the bench and the talent that they had, they'd be near the top of the league in no time. You and I both agreed on that when we watched that game live there. Now, the NHL woke up Monday morning to see the Florida Panthers sitting not only on top of the Central Division, but on top of the league standing as itself. After a slow start, Sergei Bobrovsky has started to assert himself as one of the top goalies in the league, 15-5-2 record. It was backup Chris Driedger who was able to find Bob time to find his form and keep the Cats in the hunt early in this season. Driedger sports an 11-4-2 record, which arguably gives Florida the best 1-2 punch between the pipes in the league. Jonathan Huberdeau and Alexander Barkov have led the way on offense, but don't discount for 1 minute how important the offseason acquisitions of Patrick Hornquist is to this team. That was huge. Getting him from Pittsburgh was huge. The rings on his fingers and the contributions he's made to the Penguins to get those rings, along with his experience, are invaluable to the young players on this team. Carolina Hurricanes, you can't discount them either, Peter. They're also a nice surprise this year as well. They've won games with a committee of goalies, and just this past Sunday got Peter Mrazek back after missing 31 games. He stepped in to not only win the game, but post a 1-0 shutout win as well. Other surprises in the Central Division are Nashville making a midseason push for the playoffs. I don't see that. They're 8-2 in their last 10, but the Blackhawks got off to such a good start, seem to have reality walking through the door as they've gone 3-7 their last 10. Dallas Stars, that's my pick to go out of that division. Yeah. As we mentioned earlier, battled COVID, rescheduling issues, and have games in hand that could still put them in the playoffs. Injury bug has also hit them hard, missing key components: Ben Bishop, Radek Faksa, Tyler Seguin, Jason Dixon, and Alexander Radulov, just to name a few, will make it tough to turn games in hand into victories. Detroit, you and I both agreed right from the start, they're exactly where they're supposed to be. Yep. Do you see Dallas taking advantage of those games in hand? And do you really believe Nashville can make that final push to go? I mean, you're talking Tampa, you're talking Florida, Carolina, and Dallas. There's your 4 playoff teams. Where do you see Nashville? Who are they taking out?
Well, I mean, looks like Florida, Tampa, Carolina are, like you said, they're in for sure. I guess the battle for that last spot is going to be between Dallas, Chicago, and Nashville. Columbus has just been a huge disappointment this year. They've underachieved. They've got about 16 games left in the season, which will be the last 16 games for John Tortorella. I could see that easily.
I basically am watching Columbus lately just to see who's going to bench next.
Yeah, bench next, or who's going to be available for trade. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. But Chicago's, like you said, they're kind of their last 10. They're kind of going the wrong way, and Nashville's going the right way. But can Nashville keep it up? And if they start getting back a couple of their injured players, they may hold on to that fourth spot and fight Dallas off. I'd like to see Dallas come back, though. They've had a tough season between the COVID issues, between getting their coach yanked off the bench and in the second intermission of a 1-0 game, to all the injuries they've sustained this year. It's tough. And one of the things we didn't mention is Ben Bishop's out, but Hudobin's out on COVID protocols. So they're down to their third goalie right now that played on Sunday in that Ottinger, who played in that 1-0 loss to Carolina. So, they're doing everything they can, but they just seem to have all the stars aligned wrong this year for them.
Only thing I don't want to see is Dallas, Tampa, round one. I just don't. that to me, and if Tampa finishes first, I don't want to be in that 2-3 slot. I just don't. Yeah. I mean, no matter how you look at it, where you fall, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're playing for your life. And unless somebody takes Florida or Carolina completely for granted or lightly, they're going to be in trouble if they do, because those two teams are fighting, and they're fighting for every inch of ice and every goal they score. And if they are taken lightly by Tampa, by Dallas, by anybody, they're going to get embarrassed.
Well, as of right now, Carolina is only sitting 1 point behind Tampa with a game in hand. And, so they're not in bad space at all. But I'll tell you one thing, if Carolina ends up in the third spot, and I'll speak to this from my past coaching days, there is nothing I like better. And people will go, why? But nothing I like better than starting a playoff series on the road. You don't have the pressure. Now, the crowd's not going to be a factor in most places, but you don't have the pressure of playing at home. You don't have the distractions that you normally have playing at home. And you go into the visitors' rink. If you split the first two games, you're 1-1 going back to your barn, and the next two are yours. That's a good place to sit.
All right, Peter. West Division. As we expected, Colorado Avalanche and Las Vegas Golden Knights neck and neck for the top spot in that division. We just did a whole thing on Avalanche and the fight that this is going to be right down to the wire. What is a surprise is the continued strong play by the Minnesota Wild. They led offensively by rookie sensation Frill the Thrill Kaprizov, potentially the best group of defensemen in the league, with Jonas Brodin, Ryan Sutter, Matt Dumba, Ian Cole, and Captain Jared Spurgeon, goaltending tandem that seems to feed off of each other's success in Tim Talbot and Capo Kapanen. They have seemed to entrench themselves into the number 3 slot in the division, and if the Avs or Golden Knights slip just a bit, it could overtake one of them. Biggest disappointment in the division seems to be the St. Louis Blues, the team I said was coming out of there. Just can't seem to string victories together, and even getting Vladdy Tarasenko back into the lineup much earlier than expected, it still hasn't ignited a fire into the Blues, who have gone a less than mediocre 2-7-1 in their past 10 games. They just can't seem to string victories together. And even with getting Vladdy Tarasenko back into the lineup earlier than expected, it still hasn't ignited a fire into the Blues, who have gone a less than mediocre 2-7-1 in the last 10 games. The Blues only sit 3 points behind fourth place Arizona with a game in hand, but they need from goaltender Jordan Binnington out to get their collective heads out of their asses and start making a push, because there are less than 20 games left in this abbreviated season. Peter, I still think they're going to make a strong push to the end, and I'm going to stand my ground on St. Louis to push hard against Colorado and Las Vegas. I'm not saying they're going to beat them, but I still think they're going to be there in the end, and I'm going to hold my ground to that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think St. Louis is still in a good spot. I've got absolutely zero faith in Arizona. San Jose's been playing pretty good, but San Jose, LA, Anaheim, they're not going to be a factor in this division the rest of the way. They could play spoiler against the Blues in Arizona, but I don't see them being a factor to overtake either of them.
No, I don't either. I don't see either of those teams touching the playoffs by any way, shape, or form. Before we go jumping into the NCAA and the Frozen Four, I'm going to jump back real quick, Peter, to the East Division. Now, one of the teams we didn't talk about, Boston Bruins, and I don't dislike the Bruins. They were actually one of my favorite teams as a kid growing up. I just do not like BM. We'll just call him BM. And you know what that means. But anyway, Brad Marchand, I can't stand him. The Bruins are right where they're supposed to be in that division, and they're gonna be a push to come out of that division as well. So Boston isn't going to surprise anybody. They're playing well. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, you know what? I mean, yeah, they're playing well, not as well as a lot of people think.
Correct. They have a slump going, right?
And it's a goal thing. I was listening to a broadcast the other day, a team playing Boston, and the visiting announcers were saying that we touched on a couple months ago when we talked about the Bruins. When you get past that main line with BM and Pasternak and Bergeron, that they don't have a lot of scoring, and that's affected them. I mean, they're actually only sitting 4 points ahead of Philadelphia with 2 games in hand, but they have a number of games left against the Flyers, and so it could be interesting to see what happens. But I do think Boston will prevail, get that final playoff spot in that division, and then they're going to have to play either Washington or the Islanders. You know, if they get the Islanders, good luck, because they got a tough defense, and they'll shut down that line for sure, or do their best to shut that down and then make the other lines pretty well, negligible for sure.
All right, Peter, we're going to jump into other parts of the hockey world in just a brief moment. Right now, we're going to do an unusual I Bet You Didn't Know. Now, today's I Bet You Didn't Know concerns all the teams in the NHL. What is the largest shutout in NHL history? Who are the 2 teams? We don't have to ask you the score, but who are the 2 teams involved in the largest shutout in NHL history? Is it A, Detroit Red Wings, New York Rangers? Is it B, Edmonton Oilers, Vancouver Canucks? Is it C, the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Detroit Red Wings? Is it D, the Detroit Red Wings, Chicago Blackhawks? Largest shutout in NHL history between 2 teams. Is it A, Detroit and New York? B, Edmonton, Vancouver? C, Toronto and Detroit? D, Detroit and Chicago? Yes, there's a theme there. Detroit is 3 of the 4 largest, but you're going to get the answer in just a few minutes. So stick around. We're going to get you the correct answer. In other parts of the hockey world, the NCAA Frozen Four is all set to take place in Pittsburgh starting Thursday, Peter. First game on Thursday has Minnesota State taking on St. Cloud State starting at 5 p.m. Second game is Minnesota Duluth against UMass, which is at 9 p.m. Now, you can catch both of these games on ESPN2 in the States and on TSN app and tsn.ca in Canada. The winners of these games are going to face off for the national championship Saturday at 7 p.m. Now, you can watch that game on ESPN in the U.S., TSN in Canada. I am still disappointed, and not everybody was involved to determine who's going to come out of this Frozen Four, who could have been in the Frozen Four, especially with Notre Dame being knocked out, arguably one of the better teams in this thing. Michigan with arguably the number 1 overall draft pick and 3 of the top 10 draft picks in the upcoming NHL draft. None of these guys got to play in this because of COVID protocols. So it's kind of a anticlimactic ending, if you will. And
yeah, I'm sure there's going to be
still going to be good.
I'm sure there's going to be an asterisk beside the champion this year. like I said, not all the teams participated. St. Lawrence and Michigan, who were supposed to be in the tournament, got pulled out. And because St. Lawrence went out early, Notre Dame went in and they got pulled out. So, 3 teams got pulled out even before they had a chance to see the puck drop. And that was a shame for sure.
Absolutely disappointing. Now, we're going to make our picks in those games and in an eventual winner. Right now, Peter, what do you say we give folks the answer to I bet you didn't know? The largest shutout in NHL history. Is it between A, the Detroit Red Wings and New York Rangers, B, the Edmonton Oilers, Vancouver Canucks, C, Toronto Maple Leafs, Detroit Red Wings, D, Detroit Red Wings, Chicago Blackhawks? Peter, who are the 2 teams involved in the largest shutout?
Well, you definitely mentioned the fact that Detroit is involved in 3 of those 4 games, so you can narrow it down to 75% chance of Detroit being one of the teams, but the other team would be the New York Rangers, and that was way, way, way back, right around when you were born, Ed.
Yeah, right.
1944. Now, if you want to look at the, hold on. Let's
tell the folks what the score was.
Well, that was a 50-0 rout by Detroit. But now that was obviously near the end of World War II when not all the best players were. So in the modern day NHL, though, there was 2 games that actually tied with 13-0 victories.
Edmonton and Vancouver in '85.
And then that team up in Toronto, where yours truly hails from, spanked the Red Wings, where you held call home, 13-0 in 1971.
Yeah, and then the last one, Detroit annihilated Chicago. And I can honestly tell you, December 4th, 1987, I was sitting in row 4, seat 2, and I watched Detroit spanked the living daylights out of the Blackhawks, and I loved every minute of it. Another good one I saw that is not part of the top 10 NHL shutouts, Detroit, I was there for that game as well, beat Edmonton 9-0. Great game. Great game. Yep. But largest shutout in NHL history, 15-0, January 23rd, 1944. The Detroit Red Wings beat up on the New York Rangers, and they had already changed from the New York Americans. Before we wrap it up today, Peter, let's get into the mailbag.
Yep. We have Jim from Ypsilanti, and he had a question that falls right into what we're going to complete with the Frozen Four. He wants to know who we think will win the NCAA Frozen Four this weekend. So do you want to make your picks first, Ed? Well, I'm not going to go too far off the reservation here. It's a toss-up for me between a team from Minnesota. I'm not sure. Yeah, another state that has 75% chance, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I think I'm going to go with Minnesota State in this one to come out. UMass is going to give Minnesota Duluth a run, but I think at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Minnesota State.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I'll narrow it down even more. I'm going to pick Minnesota Duluth to beat UMass in a close game. They got all the confidence in the world after that historic 5-overtime win over North Dakota and a good amount of time to recover from it. And I see St. Cloud knocking off your pick, Minnesota State. And then I see in an all state of hockey final, Minnesota Duluth coming on top of St. Cloud.
Really? No, I don't see it that way. I still think Minnesota State is going to take the whole thing.
Well, so we'll see. We'll put an adult beverage on it, Ed.
You got it, brother. You got it. Before we wrap up today's show, one league that has not gotten off the ground this season at all is the Ontario Hockey League. The OHL is part of the 3-league Canadian Hockey League. Both with the WHL and the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League have started play this year, but it looks like the OHL might not drop the puck at all. Have you heard anything on the Ontario sports minister getting her head out of her ass and letting these kids play, or what is going on?
Well, after hearing of a plan that I heard from a few people to have the 20-team league start in 4 bubble locations, which were going to be Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Owen Sound, London, and in Kingston, it looks like that may be impossible to even happen as Ontario just entered another 28-day lockdown this past Saturday. And if the previous 2 lockdowns were an indicator, it will go past the 28 days. Perhaps maybe the league should consider moving their bubbles to the U.S. since they do have teams in the league from Saginaw and Flint, Michigan, along with Erie, Pennsylvania. Perhaps a bubble-style format in those areas may be able to get some games in.
You could do everything in Michigan or Pennsylvania. You've got two teams right up the street from each other in Flint and Saginaw with plenty of hotels in both areas. Yep. And you could split the 2 arenas and either go back and forth or just have so many teams in Saginaw, so many teams in Flint and play. Okay, so there's no fans or very few fans allowed in those buildings. You and I are both extremely familiar with both of those stadiums. And the inner workings of it and everything about them. And actually, Flint has 2 arenas there. One is a practice rink that can still be used for games.
Yeah, so they do have the facilities. And if they talk nicely to USA Hockey, they may also be able to use the rink in Plymouth. So that's another, that would give them 3 rinks.
The old Whalers, the old Plymouth Whalers played there.
Right. So, and speaking of that, Ed, just before we wrap up, let's remind our listeners that on Wednesday, there is a game that's going to be on the NHL Network starting at 8 p.m. And that is a chance for all hockey fans, especially NHL fans, to get a chance to see who's going to be some of the top picks that are not playing in the NCAA, available from the United States Hockey League and the U.S. National Development Training Program, which is going to take place in Plymouth this Wednesday. That's going to be a great game, well attended by scouts. And like I said, if you're a hockey fan and want to see some of these kids before they're drafted, this is something to tune into.
Station and time one more time, Peter.
That'll be on the NHL Network at 8 o'clock Eastern time.
On this Wednesday, the 11th.
This Wednesday, the 7th. Yes, you're correct.
Or excuse me, this Wednesday, the 7th. Yes.
Yep. That's it, Ed.
All right, Peter. Well, that's going to about wrap it up. Today's show has been brought to you by the Florida Grow House. Have you ever thought about your own greenhouse? Here's your chance to get one. Have your own healthy, organic, fresh, delicious fruits and vegetables. It's fun, it's relaxing, and it's money-saving food in your own backyard. Just go to floridagrowhouse.com. Give them a call, 772-249-2095. Mention you heard this ad on PuckHeads Insider Report. Get yourself a $750 discount. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you have, please hit like. Please hit subscribe. Have any questions on your favorite team? Send them off to us, puckheadsinsider@gmail.com. Our Facebook page is Puckheads Insider Report. Here in South Florida, my name is Ed Combs. For Peter South up in Windsor, Ontario, thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to talking hockey again with you next week.